I know these are strange times we are all experiencing. I hope you are all safe and well. Today I want to provide you with some good information you will be able to use to improve your ability to gain more business on the internet with your website. With that said, let's begin our discussion on changing trends, the internet, and website design. First, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about myself and my company. Burris Creative is a full-service marketing and online solutions business. As it was said earlier, I've been in business since 1994. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies and small to mid-sized businesses, providing a broad array of services, and of course, in that process, we've designed over 125 websites using a number of different website platforms. I provide lead generation, SEO, and advertising services to companies nationwide. My company is a member of the Alternative Board in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've prepared articles and blogs for Tab Corporate and my local tab owner, Debbie Strong, who has gotten leads and new board members from these efforts. All right, the internet's changed, and this is something that everybody needs to be aware of. And here are some of the changes you're going to want to consider and how they relate to your business. Most businesses have access to high-speed internet, which increases their reliance on it. Today, I would have to say most of us who are in business, if our internet's down, it seriously impacts our ability to run our businesses. So this has been a big change. If you look back, many of you probably remember a time when you weren't as reliant on the internet, but today it's really a part of our lives and part of business that we can't live without. Accessing the internet on smartphones now accounts for 50% of its use. And I don't think there's any way we can say it will not increase with the implementation of 5G. I do a lot of work with companies looking at their analytics each month, and it has been amazing to see the growth in smartphone use of the internet and visitation to people's websites. So today, this 50% is even higher for many businesses, depending on the type of business that they are. Security's become a big issue, with Google now requiring websites to have an SSL certificate to show on Chrome without a thing in the top corner warning that the site is not safe. An SSL certificate is basically means your site is on a secure server, that people can enter information on your site, such as fill out contact forms, make payments, things like that on your site safely without fear of their data being compromised. This is part of this is coming from Europe has required this for some time, but Google is now really pushing to have this done by affecting the way your site shows on Chrome, also affecting the way your site is handled in searches and placement in searches. Google also dominates the search engine and the advertising sectors of the internet. They have for some time, but nowadays when we look at where leads are coming from, we're seeing that most of the traffic to websites, well over 85% of it, is being delivered through Google. The other thing that we're seeing today is that social media, blogs, streaming video, as well as online meetings, which I'm sure all of you are using now that we're all dealing with stay-at-home orders. All these things have become things we use every single day. They put increased emphasis on the bandwidth of sites. It's not uncommon for people to talk to several people now about internet provision because you want to get the most bandwidth and speed that you can when you're dealing with the internet today. Visitor behavior has changed significantly on the internet. We think a lot of this has to do with the fact that more people are using mobile devices. But then again, another fact is that younger users surf the web much differently than their predecessors did. They've had exposure to the web for some time, and they seem to surf a whole lot faster and spend less time on websites than visitors did just 3 years ago. They average viewing just a few pages on a site. It used to be people put up sites that had lots and lots of information. Well, when we look at analytics on those sites now, we're not seeing those pages even being looked at. To a large extent, more pages they're just sitting there, static pages, not really getting attention. So companies have kind of started trying to right size their website to get more interaction, more conversion. Another thing that visitors expect your site to look good on a smartphone. If you have a website and it doesn't convert over to a smartphone and look good, that website will not have people spend time on it. They will just bounce back and go back and look for a site that looks good on their phone. This is a problem if you have an older website that may not have had mobile compatibility dealt with when it was built. It's also an issue if your site was constructed a certain way with sidebar navigation and things like that. These do not work well on a smartphone. So you want to pay attention that your site looks good on a smartphone, and the reason for that is the amount of people now accessing sites. When we look at Google Analytics on websites today, we're finding that over 50% on a majority of sites are bounce backs. What this means is someone sees your site or information about your site, they click on it, go to your site, and they spend less than 15 seconds before they go back. If it's less than 15 seconds, Google will classify that as a bounce back in your traffic because they don't feel that 15 seconds is enough time for someone to have interacted with your site. And this is a big number. We kind of refer to this in the business as the ADD factor of web surfing, and that people are just going there, not seeing immediately what they want and going back, or maybe just misreading what they saw and went to your site by accident. But it clearly shows that a rapid pace of search engine implementation and usage on the internet. Another thing we found is that now visitors are more apt to click to call than fill out an email form. We all know the value of an email form. It allows us to collect information like the internet, like email addresses, phone numbers, things like that. And nowadays people just are apt to click to call rather than fill out the email form. So we need to pay attention to making sure you have a number on your site that can be clicked to call, because it's a high likelihood people will call it if they're really interested in doing business with you. A site visitor will form their image of your business based on your homepage. If your homepage isn't knock it out of the park, it's going to hurt the ability for you to convert visitors to prospects and to customers on your website. What this means is your homepage has to clearly define who you are, what you do, and deliver it really quickly without too much content on the page other than what it takes to tell them what you do and what your business is. It's kind of like your billboard on the internet. SEO has changed a great deal also. If any of you have ever hired an SEO company to go into your site, there was all these things they used to do, and still do, many of them, to get you ranked on Google in a higher ranking. Google has changed the way they rank the content on your site. Actually, what they're looking for now is specifically wording on your site that they can use to decide what you do and how to rank you on websites. What this means is your keywords and that you want to be found under need to be actual text on your web page, and they have to be done in such a way that the search engines find that text relevant. For example, just listing all your keywords at the bottom of your site or somewhere will not be considered relevant. What Google's looking for is the use of that text in relevant wording and descriptions on your website. So if you have a website and have not paid attention to that change, this is something you need to address with your website designer and see if you can get the content to be more relevant and have more keyword information included on it, because that is what Google is now reading and optimizing. You know, when we say Google, we're talking about mindless algorithm-driven robots which go into your site, read the text, and categorize you and rank you by the content that's on your site. Meta tags, which were used in the background code for years by SEO people, are now largely ignored by Google. They do not pay a lot of attention to that. So if you are still depending on meta tags to be found under certain searches, there's a high likelihood they're not working like they used to or working at all, because Google does not read those anymore. Site ranking is penalized if your site's not mobile friendly. Google put it out a couple of years ago, your site needs to be mobile friendly or else they're not going to rank you on mobile searches like they used to. And this will affect your ranking on desktop searches. So if you do not have a mobile friendly website, this is going to affect what page you show on and how far up in Google rankings you are if people are looking for your services. Another thing that's affecting your ability to be found on websites is the Ssl certificate. Your site has to be on a secure server. It has to read https://www, your website name. If it reads HTTP, you are not on a secure server. You will be flagged by Google in searches. They'll flag your site and say it's not a secure site. You will be flagged whenever somebody goes on your site, and you will also, this will affect your rank that Google will place you if your site is not on a secure server. Now, site ranking is also affected if you have no changing content on your website. If your website hasn't changed in the last year, Google will look at your site and say this is a static site. They're not providing relevant content on a regular basis, and they will rank your site lower than they would if your site has something that is changing on a regular basis. One solution that many companies use to solve this problem is they have a streaming blog that goes to their website that has changing content every time they post a new blog. So this might be one way you can deal with this issue. The other thing that can affect your ranking on Google is the amount of traffic you get to your page. If you have a site that doesn't have many visitors, this will hurt you in being ranked on Google under the keywords you want to be found. Now, you'll always be found under your site name or your company name. But if somebody's not looking for you by name and they're looking for you for what you do, and your site has only had 100 visitors in the last month or 30 visitors in the last month, and these numbers, it's not, there's people that don't get a lot of visitors to their site. And the problem here is that will also affect Google's ranking of your site, because Google, remember, has analytics connected to their search mechanisms, and so they know how much traffic you're getting. And part of the reason, one way you can improve this is to actually do some advertising with Google and do some search engine marketing, which is commonly called Google Ads. Okay, here's a couple of questions. When people come to me and say, you know, I'm looking at my website and all, here's a couple things I ask them to take a look at and ask themselves these questions. Is the information on your site concise and clearly relates to what you do? I've seen sites that did not meet this criteria. I had to really spend some time on the site to figure out what the company does. They used a lot of industry jargon, so to say, a lot of big words and stuff. When people go to your website, they want it to be just the facts. So you need to try to be concise and clearly. You don't want it to be too wordy. But if you do have worded, you do want to use keywords on your site. You've probably seen a lot of sites now use bullet points rather than paragraphs. There's a reason for that. Bullet points are more concise and work better for people who don't like to read a lot but want to quickly figure out what you do. They look down a list of bullet points and there's what they're looking for. Does your site have a clean, modern look, or does it look dated? You don't want to look dated in today's internet. There's too many slick looking websites out there. People, the trends they change in the way things look. Today the look is clean, modern. Minimalistic is a term I've heard used, but people want a nice, clean, crisp, modern looking website. If your site looks small on the screen, has a sidebar on the side, just be aware sidebar navigation doesn't work on phones. There's a lot of things that can make it look dated. You want to deal with that because you don't want to look like a company that's out of date, because most people want to deal with a company that's modern, keeping up with the trends. Does it look good on a smartphone? Big question to ask. If it doesn't, you got to deal with that. That rule's been in place now for about 2 years. Is it easy to navigate? I have seen sites where you click on a drop-down menu at the top and 40 pages drop down below it. That's not easy to navigate. That's too many pages. Unless you're an encyclopedia or something, you don't need all that information. You got to figure out a way to deliver your information quickly, and all those pages just will never get looked at. And people will say, oh, you need those pages for SEO. So I've had website designers tell people that. Well, that's not necessarily true. Google doesn't index all those pages. The big thing that a lot of people think is, oh, Google looks at my whole website every time they index it. They do not. Sometimes they only index the home page. That's a surprise when a lot of people hear that, but it's a reality is that sometimes they only index your home page. They do not dive deep into your site and read every page on it. So you want to pay attention to that. Is it performing well in search engines? When you type in what you do, not your name, that's the big mistake a lot of people make. I'm going to type my name in and, oh, look, I'm on page 1. You probably will always be on page 1 if you type in your name. But type in what you do. Type in a keyword a customer looking for you is going to do. And if you show up on page 5 or 6, you're not even showing up. You got to really pay attention to try to improve your ranking in search engines. So if you aren't happy with some of your answers, you may need to consider working on your website. Okay, website design has also changed. Today, businesses have a lot more options to consider when creating a website. WordPress, once an industry standard, has changed in a number of ways for users and designers. For example, WordPress was one of the first of what we call the sites that come with a content management system where people could go into it, make changes themselves after the website was built, or would have some access to go into their site and work on it themselves. If something had to change, like a price change or an employee or something like that, it changed the industry. Everybody wanted a WordPress website because of this. But WordPress has evolved. Part of the reason is that website designers quickly learned after building a site that if the site had a very good content management system, was easy to use, they probably didn't get as much residual business after the site was built because the companies would take it over and do some things themselves. This was not good for their business. As times evolved, people started wanting more complex looking sites and things than just a WordPress site normally look like. And so themes got a lot more complex. Plugins got more complex, and the builders got more complex. And a lot of designers shifted toward using these more complex themes because it made the site harder for the everyday user who wasn't a designer or a website person to go in and make changes on the site. And it created, again, a site where website designers actually got back all that residual income by making the sites too hard to work on for others. And so what started out with WordPress as its original concept has kind of changed in recent years on more complex sites. Another thing about WordPress sites is that you have to be careful that the builders, the themes, and the plugins, if they go out of date, these sites become vulnerable to hacks. And hacks occur from usually out of the country. It's people looking for website addresses, content information. Again, this is part of the reason for Ssl certificates and servers, secure servers. But the fact is, these sites can have back doors open up if you don't keep them up to date. And a lot of people that have WordPress sites may not be keeping them up to date, and this does open you up to some ability to be hacked. Wix and Square are two companies. They've been around a while with website builders, but they've really upgraded their programs in recent years, and they moved into the space that was once dominated by WordPress, and they are growing in popularity. It's just incredible how many sites I see now are being built on this platform. Wix, Square, and Weebly, these are what you call drag and drop website builders. The drag and drop means specifically that you can drag a picture onto a page, drop it, then size it and place it. You build these sites using a very easy to use website builder that's been simplified. These companies, basically, their target initially was to go after people who wanted to build their own website. Well, as these programs became more complex, they are not really, if you're really good with website design, you probably could build them that way, but I recommend people still use a professional to help them. But they feature very easy to use content management systems. Website designers used to make fun of these sites built with these builders, but today these companies account for half the websites worldwide, maybe not more now. It's just amazing how their growth is. You've probably seen companies like this advertising on TV, and they make it look all like it's all so easy, but these aren't do-it-yourself tools in some cases. Yes, you can build a simple website yourself if you wanted to, but if you bring somebody in that has some experience, they can do a much better job. They do offer developer level coding, especially Wix. You can now go in and rewrite the code in Wix. Most of these sites are built on a JavaScript platform, and they offer coding and plugins much like WordPress, and almost all of these sites are hosted on secure servers, so you're dealing with the HTTPS issue. They also offer a mobile builder as part of the site platform, which again solves a big part of the problem of how do you deal with mobile websites. And most of them have pretty good SEO tools. So we have quite a few clients who are using these platforms and have very successful websites. Now, regardless of the platform you choose, we highly recommend you hire a professional to help you build your site. They have tools that you don't have, graphic tools, knowledge, and they understand the platforms more than the average person does. And so we do recommend you consider getting somebody to help you that's a professional, has built websites before, is experienced, because it can make for a much better website when you use a professional. But there are some pitfalls to hiring website designers. So I want to talk just a little bit about that. Okay, some designers are here today and gone tomorrow. People that fall under this category is that relative or that friend who took a job in LA or somewhere and moved away and no longer can support your website. It might be an employee who designed your site and quit, or you had to let them go. Your website designer, they will leave the field sometimes. I've had website designers who completely left the field after building somebody a site and won't support it anymore because they've taken a job and are doing something different now. Your website design firm can go out of business. And during times like we're experiencing right now, these are small, many website design firms are small businesses. So needless to say, they're being greatly impacted by this current situation that we're going through. So it's highly likely a lot of website design firms may not make it through this. And there's this other thing I hear is you love your website, but you hate your designer. I mean, website designers come in all shapes and sizes with all sorts of personalities, and it's not uncommon for you to get hooked up with somebody and then you realize you can't get them on the phone when you need them. You ask them to make changes, the changes don't get made in a timely manner, or you ask them to make a change and they tell you that's not a great idea. So there's a lot of reasons, but just remember, when you enter a relationship with a website designer, it needs to be somebody that you enjoy working with. All right, here's some things you can do to protect your website investment. In the likelihood something should happen to your website designer, or in the likelihood of other issues that we talked about earlier. First off, hire an experienced professional to build your site that you're comfortable working with. This is a relationship, a subcontracted relationship that you really, really want to have that works well for you. So if you have any qualms whatsoever about the person that you're hiring, make sure you talk to other people. Make sure you look at all the aspects of it, but hire somebody you enjoy and are comfortable working with, and someone who has a business of a size that they can continue to support your site in the future. Make sure you own your website. I cannot tell you how many companies have come to me. They don't know where their domain is. They don't know who is hosting their account. They don't know how to get into their Google Analytics. They don't have any of this information. This is information that dictates that you own your website. So when you set up a website with someone, when the site is built, they should provide you with all your hosting and domain information, your Google Analytics logins, your Google Places information if you're using that. You should get all this information, put it on a piece of paper, and put it in a safe file where you can get to it, because I can guarantee you that in the future you're going to need that information for some reason or another. It might be that your credit card is getting dinged and you don't know what it's for. It might be that your website designer disappears and you've got to get somebody else to help work on it. So make sure you have this information, because this means you own your website. If you have a website design firm that comes to you and says, well, we'll build your site, we'll take care of all the hosting and everything, and you just pay our monthly fee, and you're not provided this information, that's probably something you might want to think about before you jump into that, because that means you don't own your website. Okay, make sure your site is built and programmed in such a way that someone else can take it over if needed. Now, this might mean some of the things we talked about earlier, why website designers disappear. but make sure they're not using a site that's got special program. I had a company come to me, they had a website designer build their site. The site was using a theme that the website designer owned, and they had a license for it, and they had used it on a number of sites that they built. The website designer consequently went out of business. The theme basically we could not get into the theme because it had security built into it. So you don't want to get into something like that. You want to make sure you have a discussion with your website designer, make sure they're using content that you own. If they purchase a theme, you should have access to owning that theme and the information associated with it. And you want to make sure it's built in such a way that someone else can work on it. Some of these sites that are built using these really complex themes are really hard for another website designer, even someone who works in the same platform, to go in and make changes to, because they're so complex. You want to make sure your site is not built that way. When it's done, you should have a demo done for you that you participate in so that you can see how your site is worked on and how to make changes on it. Because in the event you need to make an emergency change, you may want to do that yourself. And if you have that ability, that sort of helps you out. It also can help you in the interim if something should happen to your website designer while you're trying to find someone else to take it over. Make sure your website includes a content management system that's easy to use. This kind of applies to the bullet point above. You need to have a content management system that you can pass to someone else, and it's not something that's impossible for them to figure out. Okay. I promised some answers to some key takeaways today when we were sending out the webinar promo. Here's a couple things you probably I want to answer, make sure I answer today. The secret a website designer doesn't want you to know. Many website designers would prefer that you not know that Wix and other builders are as good as they are. These are actually pretty good website builders, and they do take a lot of headaches out of websites for a lot of people, and website designers would probably prefer you didn't know about them. But they are something to consider because they're there, and they do a lot of great things. Why is it important to adhere to Google policies? Well, if you don't, you're going to rank very poorly in web searches. And so if Google says you need to have mobile compatibility, you need to have mobile compatibility. If they say you need a secure Ssl certificate, you need to pay attention to that. So make sure your site is adhering to policies dictated, because they do account for the lion's share of the searches. How to improve your site's SEO. There's a number of things that you can do quickly that can have impact. You can make sure that you have keyword-rich titles and descriptions for your site. Most of these are done at the site level. What that means is if you're on the home page of your site, it shouldn't have your company name. It should have a keyword-rich description of what your company does in addition to the name. And you should have a description that goes under it that describes with a lot of keyword-rich wording what your site, what you do as a company. This will help you in searches in a very almost immediately. Another thing you want to pay attention to is you want to make sure you have changing content on your site. If you can get a blog and have it streamed to the home page, that's one of the things that we see has good impact. Okay, and what website visitors need to see on your home page? You want them to see as much as you can tell them. This might be the only page they look at. When I look at Google Analytics, I will tell you that in a vast majority of the analytics I look at, a lot of people don't go much further than the home page. It seems to be just the way people are. They go there, if they can get the information they need. That sometimes is as far as they go, and it's just the behavior aspect of website, the way people go on websites and visit them. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A now. I've got my contact information here. If anybody would like to speak with me further, please feel free to contact me directly. lastly, I do offer all tab owners and members a discount for my services and so I would be more than happy to extend that to anyone who's interested in talking about any aspect of what we've discussed today. If you have a website designer, I'll be glad to help you communicate to them what they need, what they can do to address some of these things that we're discussing. I'm pretty, and, at absolutely no cost if you want to just call and ask a few questions. But I certainly have enjoyed putting on this webinar today, and I would like to just extend the opportunity now for you to ask me some questions.
Great, Jim. Thank you for all that wonderful information. We did get a lot of questions that came through. We have a couple of people that asked the same question. Out of the 3 website builders, which one do you prefer, or which one do you think people should use?
I will tell you from my personal opinion, I have sites that I support that are WordPress. Full disclosure, I have built a lot of WordPress websites. But of the 3 drag and drop players that we discussed earlier, and I do still think WordPress has a lot of pluses to it, and I don't discourage anybody from building a WordPress site. But of the 3 drag and drop, Wix is the most powerful of them. They're the ones that has the most ability for an experienced website designer to go in and do coding. They offer the most plugins, and they have a very user-friendly content management system. So that's one that has gained a lot of popularity because they've worked very hard to make their platform very effective, not only for the do-it-yourself website person, but also for website designers. There are a lot of website designers now who are using the Wix platform.
Great. This viewer is asking, how can you protect your website against robots?
There are several Wix, not Wix, but there are plugins available for security. If you have a WordPress site, they have a lot of security plugins. There are also hosting level plugins that you can put on your site. If you have a site that's being hosted on a cPanel, or like a WordPress site's hosted on cPanel, a lot of the hosting companies now provide protection from robots and other types of infiltration. Site lock can be implemented on a hosting level. So a lot of companies now are using those platforms. So those are one way to protect you. You can get a monthly report. It'll block the robots from accessing your site and send you the number of attempts. And some of these new website builders now also offer some security platforms to add extra security. But bear in mind, many of the drag and drop are on Ssl certificates. They are blocking them automatically by having you on a secure server. The secure server is the biggest way to block robots, because basically what they're looking for are contact forms or contact information being gathered at the site level. If you're still using what we call hosted email, like it's like your hosting company provides you with email services. That's what most people, robots and hackers, are looking for, is to get to those hosted email accounts, because then they can use them to spam people.
Great. How do you know that there's too much information on your website?
One good way to find out is to look at your analytics and see how much time somebody is spending on your site. And then what we do sometimes is we get in Google Analytics, you can actually see the pages somebody looked at on your site. You can see what we call the site flow. If you are familiar with analytics, or if your website designer can walk you through your analytics, they can show you how much time somebody's spending on your site, and that helps you to decide how much content to have on your site. If you've got like 15 pages on your site and people are only looking at 1, 2, or 3, that's sometimes an indicator you've got more content than the person actually wants. But look and see if you've got any what we call dead pages, pages that nobody is actually ever looking at. And also look at other people's websites. Look at your competitors' websites and see how much information they give. If you give somebody too much information on your website, and this is the marketing guy in me, but if you've got all your stuff on your website, they don't have a reason to contact you. And our main goal with having a website is to get an inquiry from someone to do business with us. So if you tell them everything about you on the website, then you really don't leave a lot of reasons for them to contact you directly to get more information. So try to not give away everything, but tell them enough to intrigue their interest, make them know that you can deliver what you're looking for, but at the same time, be wary of the fact that the goal of a website is to get a prospect.
Wonderful. This next viewer asks, Google policies change constantly. How can a small business keep up to date with those changes?
Well, when Google makes big policy changes, they let you know. They start putting it out and let people know. It'll even show up in the news and stuff like that. And the policy change about Ssl certificates and the policy about mobile things were well publicized before they were ever fully implemented. So website designers knew about it and were advising their clients. IT people knew about it and were advising their clients. So the big changes you're going to find out about. Now, Google changes their algorithms constantly. And the reason they do that is to keep people from being able to trick Google with their SEO services. So they don't tell us what changes they make to the algorithms, but they do happen. I've seen companies who spend a lot of money on an algorithm, on having somebody go in and do SEO on their site, and the type of SEO they were using got negated by Google changing algorithms. Those things we cannot control. And when you ask Google about it, they say, well, we're trying to make it a fair world. But, you know, the reality of it is what Google really would like for you to do, and let's not kid ourselves, Google is an advertising company, and they really would like for everybody to spend some money on Google advertising. So they're going, some of these algorithm changes and all are things to try to kind of force you into doing some paid advertising.
Great. This viewer asks, how has apps affected the importance of websites?
How has what?
Applications, apps.
Okay. Apps for some companies work very well. I have a company I work with that has a food delivery service. They were an app company driven by apps, but because websites now are mobile friendly, he only has 30 people that use his app where he had 3,000 or 4,000 several years ago. Everybody's now just using his mobile website. So the fact that everything has become much more mobile friendly has affected the use of apps. That's not to say people aren't still using them in specific applications and certain types of businesses, but because websites have gotten better at serving you on a smartphone, many of the apps are not being used as much. For example, if I want to check my bank account on my phone, I have an app, or I can log into my bank's website and do the same thing. So it's just a matter of choice for many people. A lot of the younger people do still like using apps, and so it's just whatever the preference is. I think the app business is still very, very viable and has a lot of applications, but most of the applications now I'm seeing have more to do with integration with a business once you're doing business with them. So they're not necessarily being used to acquire new business. They're being used more for actually interacting and working with a business once you're using them. But applications are hurting to some degree. Apple has made some said some things that kind of indicate that the use of apps is not as extensive as they had hoped it would be at this point. But again, part of this is coming from the fact that mobile websites are almost like apps in themselves.
All right, we got a couple people that have asked the same question. Are accelerated mobile pages worth it?
You know, it depends on the type of network you're on with your phone. I have never run into any real problems using a website on a phone with a if the site was built properly. Now, I have had some, I don't know that they're necessary. This is something that's fairly new that's come along, and I don't know if it's been proven yet. Most websites, though, load very quickly on phones, and I would have to say, you know, if you use LinkedIn, it's easier to use on a phone than it is on the desktop lately because it just seems to be faster on the phone. But I think that it just depends on the website and whether you're having any problems in that area. But if you have a site that's built properly and is using properly implementing a mobile user, you shouldn't have a lot of problems with website page loading. But again, this might be something that companies that don't have a site that was optimized for the mobile usage might be running into and may need this type of application.
Great. It looks like we have time for a couple of more questions. Let's see. This person asks, I like my website, but I don't like my developer. Should I change to a new developer? Does this mean rebuilding my website? I'm sorry. Does this mean I have to rebuild my website from scratch?
Not necessarily. First, what you want to do is get all the login information to your website and your content, and then you want to have someone else talk to some people about the type of website, how it's built, and then have them take a look at the site to see if they can work on it. If it was built in WordPress or Joomla or something like that, there are plenty of people out there who can work on those sites. If the site was built with, and then I still see a lot of this, with some sort of priority-based software build, then it might be a problem. But in most cases, website designers use tools that are available to them. So get all the information you can about your site, your login information, your passwords and everything, and then have some other designers take a look at it and see if they can work on it. And then ask those questions about, we talked about earlier, is the things that will make you comfortable working with the website designer. And you know, chances are there is someone who can work on that site for you that you'll like. And so this happens a lot. It's not uncommon, but the first thing you have to do is get ownership to the website. Make sure you have all the logins, and then share that information with the people you're talking to, the designers you want to. Get some referrals from some friends and people like that, of people that they've enjoyed working with, and then contact them. They're going to need to look into the back end of the site to see how it's constructed before they can answer your questions. So you can get the information to them. If you have any qualms whatsoever, you can change the password on the site after they've taken a look at it. But that's how the process starts. You first got to find people you like, and then be willing to share and let them look at the site and tell you. If they tell you they can make any changes you want with no problem whatsoever, you like the website designer, then that would be, you have an option at that point. You don't necessarily have to rebuild the website.
Wonderful. Let's see. I think we have time for at least one more question. This person asks, you mentioned a while ago that meta tags are now ignored from Google. What's the difference between a meta tag and website description?
The site description. The site, when you go on Google, and say if you go on Google and you type up the name of the company, and Google is going to show you your page title and your site description when they show you a listing for your website. That's the first place to start. The site description is the little paragraph below the page title. This is where most SEO occurs now. SEO occurs in three places on each page, and these are the most important things to address when you're dealing with Google. One, make sure that the page has a site description or a site title, a site title that includes some keywords. Make sure the description has keywords that you want to be found under. And then the last place you want to pay attention to with Google is to make sure the text on your home page is relevant to the keywords in your description and your title, meaning those keywords should also appear on the home page of your website or on the pages of the site that match up with that description and page title. So these are what most of these are the most important things that are read when a site is indexed. And you can also submit a sitemap to Google through the webmaster tools, which is always helpful. Your site should always be linked to Google using analytics. And if you can use any Google tools on your site, for example, a Google map of where your business is located, maybe a place to do a review for your site, a link to the review site with Google Places. These are also good things to do to improve the performance of your site. The meta tags thing, what happened was it was abused. People would load thousands of meta tags in the background of a site, and Google just kind of got to the point where it was clogging down their indexing robots, and they just decided to quit reading them because it was just not playing fair. Not everybody knew how to do it. Secondly, people were abusing it by overloading meta tags on the site. So nowadays, Google has started they've been very clear about this, that they're not reading that content like they used to, and they really want to read what we call the most important content on your site. So those things I described just now are the things that make the most sense if you want to communicate to Google and its indexing what you do.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim, again. If we weren't able to get to your question, or you guys have any questions that you come up with after this presentation is long over, please go ahead and feel free to either give Jim a call or email him. No need to jot this down if you don't have a pen and paper. I am going to be sending out this presentation and the slide deck via email later today. I am so glad that you joined us today, Jim. There was a lot of great information. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Of course. I hope you guys can all check out all of our previous Boss webinars on demand by visiting our website and clicking on webinars. I hope to see you all again on April 28th for expert financial advice to address challenges, seize opportunities, and manage cash flow in the COVID-19 era. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day.